Let's play some hockey. Tonight.
Energetic, passionate, and savvy. Gouche Live. Brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Gouche.
Welcome to another episode of Gouche Live right here at the Bottom Line, 22 Front Street, brought to you by those good people at the Hockey News and, of course, Sports Illustrated. Well, as you know, the passing of Borje Salming has been felt around the world. He was not only a great hockey player, a pioneer, but most importantly, a wonderful human being that I had the chance to meet. What's really incredible are the numbers. On the 21st game for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year, in a 2-1 victory, the passing of number 21, Borje Salming. Is there somebody up there looking down on us? I'd love to know. And you know who I'm going to ask? I'm going to ask my producer, Jordan LaRoche.
Gooch, that's a little bit of a scary story there.
I'm not sure it's scary, if I could use another term. You always think, is there something more out there? And those numbers on a particular would just bypass everybody.
Yeah.
But the day after of a 21st game with a 2-1 victory, number 21, wow.
Or is just very, very well scripted by the NHL.
It'd be the first thing that they did well scripted. Of course, it's a sad, somber note with Borje Salming, 71 years old. It was very quick. ALS is a nasty, nasty disease. And he hard fought. Obviously, with Daryl Sittler, I had a chance to text with Daryl Sittler today, and he thanked me for giving my condolence to him because I know how close he was. But everybody like Doug Gilmour, Lanny McDonald, all of those guys all spoke of him not just being a great hockey player, a great human being, but always there as a person to help. And that's what I think the community rallied around on the Hockey Hall of Fame weekend to show the love, and it was certainly tearful.
Yeah, and you saw when he went out onto the ice when the Leafs played the Canucks a little over a week ago now. That was a really emotional scene for everyone involved. I mean, I'd never seen Borje Salming play. I'm not a Leafs fan by any means, and I still felt something in that. So obviously, the hockey scene is going to be different without him. And his career, I didn't know much about it. Doing some research today over the past few days about him, you kind of learn a little more about the player he was, but just how resilient and how hard he pushed to stay in this role. Because for a Swedish guy coming into a North American league at that time, it's a very different game, very different lifestyle, and a very different way of life.
So. Well, and big ice surface versus small ice surface,
Yep.
Specifically for a defenseman, it's a lot more difficult. I know it's hard on the goalies, but certainly for a defenseman trying to get the angles properly. Maybe for forwards, when I went over to Germany, the opposite, it wasn't quite as bad. But this guy had a slew of injuries that he played through. He lost partial vision of one of his eyes. He then took, I can't remember the number of stitches, but he took a skate to the face. I'm going to say it was in the hundreds. I think I'm going to look that up as you give a comment. I think it was in. Did you happen to notice that? I'm going to look it up. I think it's in the hundreds. And he still became one of the best defensemen of our generation for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Was he the best defenseman ever? Let's be realistic. No, but certainly all the intangibles that he brought. He opened the door. A lot of the Swedes guys, you saw that at that particular game. Matt Sundin obviously was there. Nylander was affected by it. And there was just this love affair of a guy that took a chance, a gamble, leaving his home Sweden, coming over to the National Hockey League, really not know what's going on. Incredible. Our thoughts and prayers are with the family. Obviously, everybody that knew him knows that he will always resonate in Toronto, in the NHL, and of course, the entire hockey world.
Yeah, and kind of his journey to the Leafs is kind of cool as well. I mean, he was playing with the junior team in Sweden when they came over to Canada to play against a couple of Canadian junior teams when the Leafs ended up taking a chance on him. And immediately, the biggest thing that stood out from him, I mean, obviously very skilled, but his willingness just to stick to the North American game at the time. The European game, the hockey game, and the North American game were very, very different.
Very physical.
The North American game was very physical. And that's mainly due to smaller ice and other things like that. But the Swedish game a lot more open, a lot more skill involved. But the guys were saying he would be leaving every game with welts. Just and like you said, had the willingness to play through anything. And 787 points through 1,100 games. A guy who was praised as one of the NHL's best shot blockers. I put up a decent amount of points too.
And listen, Don Cherry never said he was wimpy, right? As he did on many of the European players. 2-time runner-up for the Norris, 3-time winner of the Viking Award. Did you know there was such an award?
No. So I don't know if it's still going on, but it's the award essentially voted by all Swedish professional hockey players. And it's for the best Swedish player that's playing at the NHL or at the time the WHA.
And there were a lot of them. Kent Nielsen was there. Obviously, Anders Hedberg, Ulf Nielsen, Lars-Erik Schuberg, a lot of incredible players. Lars, I'll tell you what, Lars-Erik Schuberg, we lost him to cancer. And of course, now we've lost Borje Salming to ALS. Our thoughts and prayers. Here we go. Let's get on to a really interesting situation in the NHL this week. This could not be more bizarre. I never saw the video. You brought it up. I never really thought about it until I did this Gouche in 1:29.
Yep.
And you sent me over the video to show me people were actually throwing their beers and hot dogs. And I did a quick calculation. It was at least $22 for a beer, $11 for a hot dog, and maybe they threw the popcorn. You just threw $45. It's almost like throwing a jersey.
So I actually been to the Devils Arena. I think it's the Prudential Center in Newark. The beer's actually pretty cheap there, so I don't think the fans are really losing that much throwing the beers onto the ice there. But some context here: the Devils had 3 disallowed goals against the Leafs. I think it was Wednesday night, and the Devils, who have been on this incredible 13-game win streak, looked like it was all coming towards an end when they got dealt a blow with the third disallowed goal, which was kicked in. I think that one was pretty obvious. And the fans just started raining beers, food, chips, anything they could find onto the ice. You can see at least players having to dodge a couple of beer cans. And apparently Mitch Marner said after the game, half of them were full.
That is dangerous.
So at that point, it becomes more of a health risk than just a funny moment. But at the same time, it's not something you see every day in the NHL.
You know what's lucky? Phil Kessel wasn't playing for the Leafs because he would have probably jumped on some of those hot dogs. Sorry, Phil, had to throw that up there. And Eric Kula came out and said, hey, people stop. And they just continued wheeling.
And he was the guy who actually had the disallowed goal. But obviously, I think it brings up a bigger point in the NHL, because the NHL owners have had some meetings about this in the last week or so about video review. There's a controversial call a couple of weeks ago with Trevor Zegras had another Michigan-style goal that was called back because of a delayed offside. Similar kind of topics of conversation coming up around here. I mean, whether if the video replay is taking too much away from the game, is it really adding enough to the game to keep it in? Yeah. What's your kind of take on it?
Well, you know what? I'm going to say, I was watching the soccer the other day, and there was a direct foul, and I don't know the game that well, but we saw that it was a direct foul. The referee said no. They went to video review, and the referee said no, and they let it go on. And it was absolutely a defining moment of that game in my eyes, because if they get that penalty shot, it may have changed the dynamic of the game. These really close calls with the guy's foot in the air and stuff, I just find that a little bit too much. And they're stopping play for 2 to 3 minutes. It's irritating to the fans. They spend enough time and energy on their bum in the seats. Let's make this game a part of the referees' decisions. They are human, as are the players. Players make mistakes. Referees make the mistakes. I think they've got to cut back what can be called and not called.
So how about this? The refs only get to use one replay from one angle to make the call, and they only get to see it once. As soon as they see it once, can't watch it again. They have to make the call on the spot there.
No, the traditions say, let's continue on. Other people, the nuances will say, hang on a sec here. Let's make it right. We have the time and the technology. I just think we don't have the time. The sport needs to get quicker, and I think it's really hurting the sport by all these questionable calls, and sometimes they don't even get it right with the video.
Because the first goal that the Devils had called back, it was a really kind of broken play, but essentially the guy was standing kind of next to Matt Murray, and Matt Murray kind of extended out with that leg, and there's one really tight angle where he actually didn't touch Matt Murray, but regardless, the goal was called back. But my kind of 2 cents on this is, I think if the ref can't make the call on the ice or within one replay, I think you have to get rid of it.
Hey, listen, Eric Kuzak, thank you for joining in. And obviously about the Borje Salming. And again, David Stubbs, no question, he is that what you say. We're live here at the bottom line. Gouche is parked out front. Last thing I want to do is get a parking ticket. So as we're talking, I'm going to pay for park. That's what technology is. Listen, if we didn't have this, then I would probably get a parking ticket if I haven't already. So let's move on to the next one. The biggest storylines from the NHL season so far. Buffalo Sabres were red hot. You and I didn't pick this. I did say I felt they had an opportunity to advance this year, but I never thought with the start they had that it was real. And it obviously turns out it's not real. Tell me about that.
Yeah, and after a really hot start, I think they were 5-1, 6-1 at the start out the year or something like that. Over the last 8 games, the well has totally dried up in Buffalo. There's only one Sabre who scored more than one goal in their last 8 games. Jeff Skinner.
He's been on fire though.
Yeah. I mean, a true coming back party for him. Eric Comrie has not been the same from the start of the year. He's down at a 0-4 record in his last 4 games, 865 save percentage and a 428 save percentage. It was a guy who I don't think a lot of people had expectations for him coming out of the year. Had a good start.
Jordan, can I just inject there? Was it not the fact that he did get injured? And it kind of, when a goalie is, you know it yourself, you're on that consistent flow. You feel good. You touch the puck. You feel the puck. You've got your angles. You get hurt, and maybe things go offside.
Normally in this case, I probably would, but Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Craig Anderson.
Say that name again.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Love it.
and Craig Anderson are both struggling this year. So it's really hard to kind of put this on Comrie and his injury. Because the wheels are falling off.
But it's also a very young team, right? They've got, if I'm not mistaken, 17 skaters that are under the age of 26. So they're going to go through growing pains, trying to find themselves. And it's great to see Jeff Skinner playing the way he can. Tag Thompson, of course.
Yep.
Is it Tag or Taj?
Tage.
Of course it is. Sage Thompson, isn't that it? So those two guys have been the highlights. And I think when you do have young players, you're going to go through those growing pains. You're going to have spurts where it's unbelievable, and then they fall off the tracks a little bit. Sometimes tough to get them back on.
Yeah, and I mean, in those 17 skaters, they're under 26. 5 of them are 21 or under. So at the end of the day, the Buffalo Sabres didn't do a ton in the offseason, only really bringing in Ilya Lyubushkin from the Leafs, who has been scratched a couple of times. And then Eric Comrie from the Jets. So they really want to go in this year with that young core. And I think this is just kind of a reflection of that.
Yeah.
They didn't do enough to improve. And I think it's just a little too early for these guys.
But I also think sometimes if management looks at it, this could be those couple of years where you allow them to develop, let them make mistakes without a lot of pressure. And certainly that's where we're going.
Although we have been saying this about the Sabres for a decade.
What was their big line? I can't remember it off the top.
It was
Perot, Martin, and
I was thinking of a later one, like Steve Ott, Kyle Okposo.
Okay, well that's not that range. Okay, let's talk about another team that have a high expectations. We both thought they were going to be one of the teams that are going to win the division and challenge maybe for a Stanley Cup. The Calgary Flames were, I would say, one of the highest anticipated teams with all the changes. Obviously, the loss of the Kachuk story and the Goudreau, and then the Huberdeau, Uyghur, and of course getting Kadri. What's gone wrong there? It just seems like one of the tires have gone flat.
Yeah, and the big perpetrator right now is the goaltending. Jacob Markstrom, who was elite last season, was second in led the NHL in shutouts with 9. Was second in Vezina voting behind Igor Shesterkin. A lot of things went right for this Calgary team last year. And if you remember me talking about Markstrom last year, I was never really 100% sold on him, even though he was having a really good year. I know from his time in Vancouver what he really can be like and the Calgary's kind of learning that lesson right now.
And he had one bad week in the playoffs last year, and they were gone quickly.
Yep.
Hey, listen, I want to go off topic a little bit here with David Stubbs. Great comment. Thank you for joining us. Habs are much better than expected. It appears the rebuild is going to be quick. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Not a playoff team, but not going to be a lottery pick team either. Doc scoring the shootout winner and taunting the Hawk fans was amazing. Your thoughts on this Montreal Canadiens team?
Yeah, I mean, while the current team is not ready, I still think they can move a couple pieces. I don't like Christian Dvorak, Mike Hoffman either. I think those are pieces that maybe you get for someone later on, but right now it works. They're going to help some of these younger guys to develop a little more. Guys like Kirby Dach, who plays a similar style to Christian Dvorak with that strong two-way game. There's just a lot of good pieces that kind of have a lot of good things to keeping those guys around for the next little bit here.
Well, I'll tell you what, and I like Josh Anderson. He hasn't been putting up the numbers, but he's one of those players that really instill that grit and grind, which is needed. And he's really brought the best out of the Caulfields and Suzuki. Though Suzuki's the captain, I think Josh Anderson is probably behind the scenes doing a lot. Thank you for that comment, Dave Stubbs. We got to get you on the show one day and talk everything Habs. All right, let's talk a little bit further on just quickly with the Flames before we leave this. What's going on with these lines? You know, your father said Lindholm was a 50-goal man this year. Not there yet. Toffoli, Ruzicka. What are your thoughts on the lineup?
So they've overhauled the lines the last week or so. They had Huberdeau, Lindholm, and I think it was Mangiapane on the top line. I mean, it was a lot more top-heavy lineup. And what we've kind of seen a couple of teams do throughout the year is kind of spread the lines out a little more throughout the top nine. And that's exactly what Calgary's done. They split up Lindholm, Mangiapane, and Huberdeau, gave them each their own line to kind of build their own identities and try and get them going individually. So top line with Toffoli, Lindholm, and Ruzicka, Dubé, Kadri, Mangiapane on the second, Huberdeau, Backlund, and Coleman on the third.
Wow.
Jonathan Huberdeau hasn't had a great year. I will say that.
But you got to find a way to get him kick-started because he is an uber talent.
He's the one guy who really needs to get going. I mean, Elias Lindholm has been okay. Kadri's almost a point per game, so you can't really fault him. But the rest of the team just needs to step up, and that depth needs to get a little more production.
How happy is Sean Monahan to be out of that mess?
Yeah, I mean,
still a good team.
It's one mess into another kind of mess.
All right, let's go new kids on the block. Some teams that haven't had much success recently are finding their way back to playoff contention. And the one that's shocking, I go back on film. I know that we did say we felt comfortable with Detroit and some of the moves they made. Obviously, they're stealing Andrew Kopp from your New York Rangers.
I loved all Detroit's moves.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And it's paying off right now. They're playing very good hockey.
Yeah. Like we said, all the offseason moves, David Perron, Andrew Cobb, Ben Sherrod, Ville Husso, and then just another year of having Lucas Raymond and Mortiz Seider on that roster has just done wonders.
And Larkin has been spectacular.
Larkin leads that team in points, 23 points in, I think, 19 games.
Yep.
And I think the biggest acquisition they made was Ville Husso in net. He's just taking that stars and just ran with it.
Did you like that? I can't recall.
Yeah, I was kind of on the fence with it because Alex Nedeljkovic is still there. He hasn't been playing great. He didn't have a great year last year. He's kind of slow coming out of the gates this year. But Ville Husso's answered all the kind of gaps that he's left. 2.36 goals against, a 922 save percentage, 3 shutouts this year. He was good in St. Louis last year, kind of up and down in the playoffs, but it looks like Detroit's found their guy for the future as well.
Hey, do you know what? They're third. Am I reading that right or 13th? The third in the Atlantic.
If it stays like that, they'll be in the first playoffs in 2016.
And just prior to that, how many years were they in the playoffs? It was ridiculous.
It's like 22, 23.
Crazy numbers. This is a big shout out to obviously Steve Yzerman and the crew, being patient. Obviously, it's a long drought being out of the playoffs, and the fans have been relatively patient. And I think, with Moritz Snyder, we talked about Larkin, of course, and Raymond. They've got a really bright future, and adding those pieces that have really kind of fit in and gelling well. Watch this team in the next couple of years. If they don't make the playoffs, they'll be there very close. Listen, New Jersey Devils. nothing but shocking in the sense that, they went 13 in a row. They lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs, as we've already mentioned, the 2-1 loss. Had they got lucky with one of those goals, it could have been another story, but
Yep.
it's now going to be the resilience. What happens now? What happens with this team after this loss? Do they spiral down a little bit, or do they remain as hot as they always been?
And we'll have to see. I mean, let's see how this team does over the next little stretch. But the success New Jersey's had shouldn't really be a surprise to people who have actually kept a close eye on them. New Jersey doesn't get a ton of media exposure, but they've been making little moves every offseason for the past probably 3 years now. In addition to
Thanks,
having,
Justin.
in addition to having 2 first overall picks, it's all starting to finally come together. I mean, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier.
Unbelievable. Point a game.
Two guys leading the team in points.
Yeah.
Finally, after, I mean, Hischier especially, when he first came to the NHL, everyone was calling him a bust. Everyone was really hard on him, but he's turning into a pretty good two-way player now.
You know who my favorite player is right now?
Yeah.
Bratt.
Jesper Bratt?
I like Bratt. I didn't even know who he was. Now he's one of my favorite players. They've been making off-season moves for the last few years. The one that everybody talks about is Dougie Hamilton.
Yep.
A nice addition to that organization.
I mean, with 15 points in 20 games this year, he's become the number one guy there. Obviously, that was probably the biggest area the Devils had to address, but grabbing Dougie Hamilton, Ryan Graves a couple off seasons ago as well, that gives you a great top unit, or even you can spread them out a little bit too. But New Jersey's defense is really solid with Vitek Vanacek back there, who's been great this year as well.
Dave Stubbs says they could play 500 hockey for the rest of the season and still make the playoffs. When you get off to one of those great starts, it certainly helps you. Anybody surprising you in the Devils organization that you just said, wow, we didn't even – for me, it's Pratt because I really didn't follow him much. I will now, of course. Anybody there that you're liking?
I mean, the big one was Jesper Bratt, 70 points last year. But, I mean, Thomas Tatar, 12 points in 20 games. Ryan Graves, a plus 17 this year. Andres Palat. I mean,
how about that Vanacek kid? You got to be happy. 2.14 goals against.
And I think the biggest thing with this Devils team is it's not really just one guy kind of getting it done. I think the whole roster is doing it. It's really hard to pick out one guy who's having a really good year on this Devils team because there's just so many of them.
Yeah, all right. New Jersey Devils, will they continue with this hot streak, or will this loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs set them off track? Hey, listen, we got to go before we get off this program. We're going to do some predictions right at the end.
Yep.
But I'm going to predict the Toronto Maple Leafs win today. I'll get some brownie points. The Seattle Kraken, the Shane Wright experiment is not working. The status is still up in the air, what they're going to do with this kid. Is it too early to kind of start writing him off? Yes.
Yeah,
I don't think
100%.
anybody should be saying it's a flop. And, of course, people look from the Montreal Canadiens, we did the right thing. Slafkovsky's not tearing up the NHL at this moment either. Talk to me about the decision that Seattle thought that they could continue on using him in the lineup and now have decided maybe to set him back and get him ready for the National Hockey League.
So he hasn't played his full 9 games. I think he's sitting at around 5 or 6 or 4, somewhere around there. But news broke earlier on in the week, Shane Wright would be going down to their AHL affiliate. Not what a lot of people would have expected. A lot of people thought he would have gone back to Kingston and the O. I think it's probably a better role for him. I mean, how much does Shane Wright really – how much more can Shane Wright do in the OHL right now?
I agree.
So they'll likely keep him around. They'll keep him there for a week or two, I think, at the most, because he has 3 goals through his first 2 games there. He's not going to stay down there for very long.
No, and it takes time. As you know, it takes time for these guys. Some guys just are naturals. They walk in. Shane Wright, a smaller structure, needs to maybe find his role in a big man's game and a fast game at that. Listen, are you surprised? Second in the Pacific, 8 points behind the Las Vegas Golden Knights.
I thought they would have taken a step up. I didn't expect it to be this big. And you have to look at 3 guys who are really pulling the weight of this team right now. Andre Burakovsky, Jordan Eberle, and Matty Beniers. Burakovsky spent some time with Colorado. He has that playoff experience. I think he's going to be a big piece for them. Eberle as well, just a guy who's been around, done it all in the NHL. And then Matty Beniers, the first-round pick from a year or 2 ago, getting his first full season in the NHL. It was a point per game in the last couple of games last year, but 14 points through 19 games this year. Everyone's saying that this kid's going to be a star.
David Stubbs, we love having you on the show. We love when people get interactive with us. I love this comment where Shane will light it up for the World Juniors. Team Canada cannot be more happy if he does stay down. If he goes back up to the NHL club, I don't think he's going to be in Team Canada.
Even then, I could see it happening.
You think so?
I mean, Chicago did it a couple of years ago.
But don't forget he got hurt. Was it a Doc?
No, it was Kirby Doc. Yeah, that's right.
And he got a wrist injury
before the tournament even started.
We've always got to think about that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people say, well, why wouldn't they? Well, these are the assets. They put a lot of time and energy recruiting them and scouting them and drafting them.
Yeah.
We have to realize, unfortunately, Team Canada, it's a business, and they have to look at their assets. And
now that you say that, because Kirby Doc missed a pretty good chunk of that season.
And he never was the same.
He wasn't.
No.
So I do think there's a very, very good chance Shane Wright doesn't go to the World Juniors.
All right. Well, let's see that. David Stubbs, thank you for joining in. All right. Anything else around the NHL that you want to bring up? Your Ryan Reeves story. Yesterday we did this Gouche.
Yeah.
Gouche in 1 minute and 29. That was really cool. It's going to be an ongoing thing that you and I are going to work on. When we're not doing live shows, we're just going to pop up. And we want to keep Gouche in 1 minute, 29 seconds. It's going to be really tough, but I'm going to do it, obviously, with your guidance and that. That story about Ryan Reeves and Foligno, holy macalarchy. That picture you showed me, how did Foligno even get up?
It's probably just one of the coolest photos probably in the NHL. I mean, it'll probably take me too long to find it right now, but look it up. Ryan Reeves, just Google Marcus Foligno and Ryan Reeves fight from last season. Watch the video too while you're at it, because it's two heavyweights squaring off.
Yeah,
it was a great fight to watch, but the photo is just I can't do it justice.
And now they're teammates.
Yeah.
You think there's any lingering factor? I don't think so.
For whatever reason, the Rangers in Minnesota just hate each other.
Yeah,
it makes no sense. They play each other twice a year.
And I hate the Minnesota Wild too. They trounced my Winnipeg Jets 6-1. All right, anything else?
We got predictions to do.
I know, that's what we're going to next. How are we doing? Do you have any numbers for us? Am I still kicking your arse?
It's been a little bit.
It's all right. You can give us numbers.
I am 65 and 60. You are 73 and 52.
Crushing you. Those are big. We got to get the percentages next time. All right, let's get right into it. Are you ready? We're going to do action pack, fire fast.
Oh, sorry. I was reading the wrong numbers.
Of course you were.
68, 61, 74, and 55.
So am I better? No. You brought me to, oh, yeah. I don't believe it. Listen, no games yesterday. That was crazy. But how good were my Vikings? Yep,
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. I didn't see too much of the game last night, but no, but the NHL is just totally on brand for them. Or organizing just a bunch of hockey games during the day. Meanwhile, leaving Thursday night wide open.
It was smart.
I don't think so.
Toronto Maple Leafs just finished playing against the
Minnesota Wild, but I mean, there's seven Canadian NHL clubs that could have played last night.
Boston looked good.
Boston did. I set a franchise record for home wins, or consecutive home wins, I should say.
All right, let's go through it. What's going on? Winnipeg Jets up against the Dallas Stars.
I'll go Dallas here.
You know what? I'm going to go Dallas with you because I think my Winnipeg Jets are a little bit behind the eight ball. They do not look like the team that everybody thought they would be. A little bit of a disappointment. The Philadelphia Flyers are behind right now. The Pittsburgh Penguins 2-0. Let's see who's got the goals. Anybody exciting? Crosby with his 11th.
He's having a good year so far.
Yes, sir. All right, let's move on to the Devils versus the Sabres.
I'll go Devils here. I think they bounce back.
You know what? I'm going to go up against you. I think the Buffalo Sabres need to turn it around, and tonight's the game. I think there's going to be a little bit of lull from the New Jersey Devils because they probably ate too many of those hot dogs and drank some of the beer. Arizona Coyotes up against the Detroit Red Wings. Arizona coming off a big win against your New York Rangers.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yes, you do.
I'm going to Detroit.
Me too.
All right.
This one's nice. The St. Louis Blues against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Both teams aren't exactly where they want to be. I still like Tampa Bay. I think they're the team that can kind of catapult up quickly in the standings. But I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I'll go. St. Louis needs a game here. I'll go St. Louis.
All right, this one's going to put you to sleep. I wish it was a later game because I could get to bed early. The New York Islanders up against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
I'm going Islanders.
Shocking. Upset tonight. The Blue Jackets
All right.
crush the Fishermen. All right. This is a very interesting game. We just talked about it. Seattle Kraken up against Las Vegas Golden Knights. 1-2 in their division, obviously in the Pacific. I'm going to let you go first.
Seattle's actually beaten Vegas a couple of times this year. So,
In Vegas, though.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to go with Seattle here.
You forced my hand not to agree with you. I'm going with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. All right.
All right.
Kings, Sharks.
I'll go Kings here.
Sharks have been looking pretty good.
They have.
Been
They
playing
have.
okay.
They lost the other night pretty badly.
Yeah.
I think it's Seattle.
I'm going to go with the Sharks at home.
All
I think
right.
they're going to win. And of course, the Bruins in overtime beat the Carolina Hurricanes 3-2. And of course, the Capitals shut out the Calgary Flames. Is there trouble in Calgary?
No, they'll figure this out. Jacob Markstrom needs to just figure out his game a little bit. I mean, he's been an inconsistent goalie his whole career. Calgary didn't do anything to address it. Rightfully so. He had a great year last year. It's just kind of come back to bite him now.
You know what's incredible? That there were a lot of games today that are already finished.
Yeah.
Montreal Canadiens beat the Blackhawks.
They're all day for American Thanksgiving.
Fantastic. 3-2, the Toronto Maple Leafs in shootout. This is a good one. The Ottawa Senators are finally maybe looking at getting on track 5-1 over the Anaheim Ducks.
You can't take too much away from that game.
As we end it, there is announcement. The Colorado Avalanche and the Nashville Predators have canceled their game tonight because of?
It's going to be tomorrow. A water main broke at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville today, and the arena's flooded.
What do you mean it's flooded? Oh, the ice plant melted? Or
No.
I've had that happen to me in Wellington.
All I got was a water main broke, and there were videos of employees walking around shoeless.
It would be better if it was in Seattle, shoeless
Yeah,
in Seattle.
yeah.
All right, Jordan LaRoche, always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing what my percentages are after tonight's show. And, of course, we will see you very soon. Jordan LaRoche, the producer. Hey, thank you for joining us for just a little bit of fun, bringing you a little bit of knowledge about the game in the National Hockey League, what happened last week. We've got new formats. Jordan has put together a string of great shows coming up next week. And, of course, don't forget, we've got the new one, Gouche. Gouche. Look at the right camera. Gouche. Gouche. In a minute and 29. Look for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us at Gouche Live right here at the Bottom Line, 22 Front Street. Brought to you by those good people at the Hockey News and, of course, Sports Illustrated.
You've been listening to Gouche Live with your host, Kerry Goulet, better known as The Gouche. Brought to you by the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated.